Good morning. Mike Mulhern from MikeMulhern'sNASCAR. On the way to Talladega Speedway Sunday morning for the Talladega AMP 500. AMP 500. Should be Dale Earnhardt Jr. Day, but he hasn't won one of these things since 2004. He hasn't won much since 2006. In fact, well, you know the story on that. Lance McGrew is going to be back next year. They had a big press conference the other day to talk about that, and I was thinking, well, he's been there. He's going to stay there. And that's not really news. But I guess when you're Dale Earnhardt Jr. this year, you need all the publicity you can get. Don't think Junior Nation's going to be cheering about much today. Junior just hasn't got it going right now. You can tell by the look in his eyes. The fire's not there. Lance McGrew concedes that getting his driver up, psyched up, that's going to be the big issue. That's also going to be the big issue over in the Joe Gibbs camp. We were talking with Denny Hamlin about the strange call that Joe and J.D. Gibbs made, strange I think, to dump crew chief Steve Addington as Kyle Busch's crew chief. They only won 12 races over the last 2 years. Only Jimmie Johnson has more wins, and he's only got 13. Dump him and bring in Dave Rogers. Now, Dave Rogers is a good guy. I've known him for a long time. Clarkson College, upstate New York. Good guys. Had shot a cup before. They moved him back down to Nationwide. He's just blowing them away in Nationwide for the last couple years. Good guy. Engineer type. Very smart. In fact, he was Tony Stewart's and Greg Zipadelli's chief engineer for several years. He's sort of a project over there, Joe Gibbs. They like him. They like his style. I got no questions about that. My question is Kyle Busch. Probably like yours. Can Kyle Busch man up to the deal and become a race driver and do everything a race driver needs to do other than just turn the wheel? There's a lot more to this business than turning the wheel. Denny Hamlin said Steve and Kyle Busch had gotten stale. I'm thinking 12 wins and they're stale? Hey, half the garage area would love to be that stale. No, more than half the garage. In fact, just about everybody in the garage would like to be that stale. And the way they did it, rather unceremoniously, if I were Steve Addington, I'd be looking at my options, and I think he is. I think somebody's going to wind up with him. I think Kyle Busch may lose Steve Addington to his brother, Kurt Busch. You know, Kurt's looking for a crew chief, too. Little sibling rivalry there. Kurt talked about it. Maybe Richard Jonas wants him. Okay, might be an option there. I just think that Steve Addington's a good old boy that did a heck of a job with a, hey, face it, prima donna race driver. Very good race driver, but a prima donna. And you got to baby these guys. There are a lot of drivers in there you've really got to baby. You had to baby Dale Sr. Of course, that was why Larry Mack was brought in to do the Daytona 500 in '98 and only lasted half a season. Won the Daytona 500, and then he had a falling out with Earnhardt, and hey, I can't remember what happened after that, but now he's a TV guy, and he's all irritated at the media, such as the media is these days, for writing what he said. Gosh, I thought that's what we're supposed to do. Find people, talk to them, and write what they say. We do that, we get in trouble sometimes. MikeMulhern.net, just a little bit. But today, I think we're not the ones on the hot seat. The NASCAR guys are on the hot seat. All those caution flags, you can't blame them for throwing a caution flag, okay? I think there ought to be a caution flag automatically, like with 30 laps to go, so we can get rid of this fuel mileage game. Just call it a fuel mileage caution. They've been throwing caution flags for debris and stuff like that. That's a debate, though. That's the debate. Some drivers don't think that they're throwing the right cautions at the right times. And, of course, then there were the cautions at the end of the race they didn't throw. Was it at Loudon? They waited too long, and AJ's hanging out there in the middle of the front stretch like Dale Jarrett was a couple of years ago that created the no racing back to the yellow. A couple of calls like that. And, of course, the controversial finishes at Talladega. The controversial finishes, Regan Smith. Hey, he starts last today. He barely made it in the field. He had to brave a snowstorm. His team did to come out here from Denver. I don't know why they're running out of Denver. That's not really, not Denver, North Carolina, Denver, Colorado, to make it here, and they almost missed the field, but they made it. Regan Smith finished first in this race last year. He was passing Tony Stewart for the lead on the front stretch. Tony blocked him low. Rather than cause a wreck, Regan went low below the yellow line. Crossed the finish line first. NASCAR not only took away the win, they penalized him back to about 19th for passing below the yellow line. I'm sorry, that was a bad call. I think everybody in the garage area realizes that was a bad call. And Brad Keselowski, here in the spring, took advantage of that situation. When Carl Edwards was leading the last lap, exact same situation. Brad moves to the inside to pass him. Carl comes down. Brad doesn't go below the yellow line. He stays right there. And we know what happened next. Carl Edwards goes flying through the air, almost into the grandstands, lands on top of Ryan Newman's car. Could have been a really nasty accident. 910 fans got hurt. None seriously, fortunately, but a bad situation, and I don't think NASCAR has really remedied it aerodynamically. They've raised the fences from 14 to 22 feet. They should have done that years ago. Gosh, every other track has done that. And they gave us a little smaller carburetor plate. I think that's more of a window dressing thing. A 64th of an inch smaller diameter. That's just going to bunch the field up by about, I don't know, maybe 12 horsepower, something like that. Make it a tighter pack. I still think we're going to see the bump draft breakaway, unless NASCAR does something. A bump draft breakaway. When you bump draft another guy all the way around the track, through the corners, through the no bump zones that have not been enforced, you can beat the pack. It was amazing. Jeff Gordon says he's never seen anything like that here. I haven't either. But you can. And we're going to see what NASCAR has to do about that. Are they going to enforce that? I don't know how you enforce that. But bump drafting, to me, running into another car at 195 miles an hour, that just doesn't seem right. There's got to be another way. But drivers say, hey, it works. It works. The whole point is to find something that works and win. Like Jimmie Johnson. He's got something that works. Nobody else has figured it out. Not even his teammates. Jimmie Johnson, I think he's going to play it careful today. I'm banking on Tony Stewart winning this race. And I don't know what those Fords are going to do. I'm going to watch Elliott Sadler with the new FR9. See what that does aerodynamically. But Tony Stewart knows how to win. He's in a funky mood, but he's got the touch, and I think he's due. That's it. Sunday morning. Mike Mulhern from MikeMulhern'sNASCAR, the Talladega 500, coming right up.